Thank you so very much, sir. We truly appreciate within the short intro that you have done, you have brought out a lot of points already. And there's one that I know many people would equally want to find out. You said Agenda 2063. What does that mean, sir?
Yeah, Agenda 2063 is the common agenda put together by the African continent, the heads of states, which has been, if you like, ratified. And this speaks about a development vision. For instance, every nation in the world has a vision in terms of development, a vision of where they want to go, where they want to be at a time like this in the future. Now, for instance, in Nigeria, you have we had what we called Vision 2010. We moved from there and moved to what we had as Vision 2020. Today, we are talking about National Development Plan 2050. That means we want to see where we want to be by 2050. And these are mirrors. These are visions that show what you want to be from where you are at this point of with the point moment. And so for Africa, Agenda 2063 is a united formula for Africa, a vision of where they want to be in terms of political development, in terms of economic development, in terms of social development, and in terms of all character of this development paradigm as a continent. This is the agenda. And it speaks so much volumes about trade. And that's why I deployed trade therein. That is the agenda that brought in the AFCFTA. That's the agenda on which CADA, the Comprehensive Agricultural Development, Africa Agricultural Development Program, is anchored. That's the particular agenda upon which mutual accountability framework of the African continent is anchored. That's the same particular agenda, vision and agenda, where the issue of joint sector reviews and biennial reviews of the African continent are all anchored. Why? For development. And they all speak to trade. For instance, the CADAP that I mentioned earlier, the Comprehensive Agricultural, African Agricultural Development Program, cannot run itself without trade. You know why? Because trade is that particular, wheel or tripod upon which every other sector stands. And let me explain this. Look at farming, and we call it agriculture, but it goes beyond that. Of course, farming, the agriculture sector, produces right from the soil. What you drop in grows, and then matures, and brings fruit, and then you harvest. Some of the harvests as fruits are eaten raw. Others are processed by who? The manufacturer, the producer. So, because of that, agriculture provides that particular raw material to feed the manufacturer. And then the manufacturer processes it. And then it moves to the next stage, which has to do with consumption. But before it gets to consumption, there are other sectors, subsectors of trade that takes care of this. For instance, the transport sector. It moves that particular product from the manufacturer, perhaps, to the consumer. It is also the same transporter, the transport sector, that moves it from the farm gate to the manufacturer. So you cannot deal with that particular sector or commodity without looking at the entire value chains. And all of these have to do with trade. Don't forget also that money is involved. And that's where you bring in issues like monetary policy. That's why you bring in environmental policy. That's why you bring in fiscal policies. That's why you bring in a lot of other things tied to macroeconomic policies of government. And that's why we say every government that wants to survive must look at that particular mirror of trade. It will set your trade policy would rather become that compass that shows your navigation, a clear navigation, a clear vision for you to navigate both your macroeconomic policies, your agricultural policies, your manufacturing industrial policies, your environmental policies, and every other policy that talks to development. And that's what Africa is doing with Agenda 2063. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, sir. And I can see this is very interactive. I see Temitope Obituwashi added the packaging sectors too. Thank you for that contribution. And I can see a question already. Yes, sir. I can see a question on the chat. Please keep them coming. I will just read one more question from the questions we had earlier, and I will call upon whoever writes a question out there to ask the question in a better format. So the other question we had was, how can a country prepare its traders for the international market? That is in general, speaking generally about different countries, and then focusing on Nigeria. How can a country prepare its traders for the international market?
If you would allow me to come in again,
yes, sir,
to deal with this within the ambit of the limit of my knowledge. I think the preparation of every country in terms of benefiting, not just taking part. There are people that are partakers, but they don't benefit. There are a lot of countries that are partakers in the multilateral system. They don't benefit anything. They cannot show today what they have gained. And I can tell you this, for instance, Nigeria and many other countries have been members of the WTO since 1995. In fact, even before the WTO was, WTO took off in 1995. Mm-hmm. Some have been members right from the, pre-WTO era, the GATT era. And so when you look at them today and bring them out to say, what have been your benefits of partaking in the multilateral system? Some of these countries, unfortunately, cannot show you what they have been able to benefit again. However, that's where the question that came up becomes very key. How do you prepare your traders? How do you prepare the actors? And don't forget, when I talk about traders, I'm talking about a holistic sector that looks at the farmer as a trader, that looks at the manufacturer as a trader, that looks at other producers as traders, that looks at transporters as traders. So the entire chain of trade revolves around all of these actors, including those who are dealing with cash, including the banking sector, including the sector, the maritime sector, and all of that. This is why today, like I said initially, that you have also trade in services that have come in. You have also looked at one area of specialty, the intellectual property, where you can now see today, you can see professional services like lawyers, doctors, and all of that coming in. These are trade in their own rights, in very particular value chains. But how does a country prepare this chain of actors? One, it is by ensuring that the entire gamut of knowledge is well packaged and transferred to these actors in a very clear manner, succinct enough that they will understand, and within that particular package also implement as they were taught. Let me explain this. Mm-hmm. The biggest problem that we have had as far as Africa is concerned is the poverty of knowledge. When Boyede was talking about, yam, export of yam today, he just made, a very clear instance, give a clear example. There's a difference between the person that was prepared with his yam to the market and the person that was unprepared, that didn't even wash his yam clear of the debris and dirt. There's a difference between the person that packaged his yam very well and the person that never cared for any package at all. There's a difference between the person that, also looked at this kind of market that he's entering to understand the level of packaging, the level of preparation that market requires before moving in. And so a lot also depends on the preparation of the government, preparing the people, these traders, to get the knowledge of the markets, get the knowledge of when the market is on, get the knowledge of where the market is located, get the knowledge of how the market operates, get the knowledge of how bargains, negotiations are done. Understand whether this market, these particular goods are to be placed on the shelf or in the open space. Now, to get this knowledge in their respective manner, we must understand that these have what we call rules or protocols. There is a protocol or a regime or a rule or a framework or an instrument following this. For instance, I see quite a lot of people here, and I'm going to give this instance without meaning any hurt. When you look at livestock that we move, the way we move livestock in this part of the world, in Africa, and compare it with how livestock is moved in Europe or in other parts of the West, what you see is that we are punishing the livestock. Rather, we're not allowing them to maximize the benefits of the environment. We are rather putting pressure on this livestock, and they cannot grow. They cannot take a benefit of the environment in terms of feeding and all of that. Even there are food commodities that we do not prepare very well in conveying. Look at vegetables, for instance. See the way in Africa we bring vegetables. I don't want to be critical in any form, but I want to talk about preparation. You must have the infrastructure. You must have the knowledge. Vegetable, for instance, that I talked about, have a very short shelf. That means lifespan. So for you to prepare that vegetable and move it to the market, you must have the effective environment and the conveyance structure and infrastructure. And what is that infrastructure? The kind of vehicle that would take this vegetable is not the open vans that we have here. It is not the keke that we have here. It is not the the kind of trucks that we have here. You are moving tomatoes, you are moving onions, and you are leaving them in an open space, and then flies will be feasting on them. And we don't, markets do not really thrive that way. They don't. So that's where the knowledge starts. Knowledge for the traders, but infrastructure provisions, the conducive environment provision by the government. And therefore, it takes two to tango. It takes two hands to wash themselves and get clean. Government has responsibility. The traders themselves, the manufacturer, the transporter, all of this value chain, they have responsibilities to play for trade, give us exactly the benefits that we have. But if you move a bit out of this space, you must also look at the role of service providers that are straight, in services. Look at banks, for instance. How many banks in this part of the world will be ready to provide that kind of service, funding, development funding that will go to the trader, go to the manufacturer, go to the farmer, go to the transporter to facilitate that kind of trade, facilitate that kind of benefit so that it will be a win-win, a win for the transporter, a win for the trader, a win for that manufacturer, and a win for the bank itself. So here are the components, most times, that we forget. Look at the ports. Your ports must be prepared to receive. If the commodities are raw materials, your ports must be effective enough to receive these particular raw materials. Your ports must be capable of moving on time those raw materials so that they will get to the manufacturer without much delay, so that they will not be rotten before they get to the manufacturer. These are raw materials, for instance. Mm. So preparations, adequate preparation by every value chain operator is key. And this is the point that is a starting point indeed, where everybody understands the value he has to add, where every operator understands what he or she has to do at every point. And then, like a chain, it moves. Once there is a break in any of the chain, it brings fatality in the benefits and the profits that have to accrue from trade. Thank you.